The Empire came. Dave had coffee. Dave Cooper was not a soldier. He didn't wear polished boots or salute anyone. He wasn't built for battle or trained for conflict. What he was, unfortunately for the invading fleet, was a maintenance engineer, a damn good one, and one who did not appreciate being interrupted before finishing his morning coffee. On Orbital Station Alpha, Dave was infamous not for bravery or brilliance, but for his unwavering morning ritual. Every technician, officer, and intern knew the 3 sacred laws that govern Dave's existence. Rule 1. Never trust a computer that beeps unprompted. If it chirps without warning, it's hiding something. Rule 2. Always carry a backup to your backup tools. Because if you only bring what you think you'll need, you're already underprepared. And Rule 3. Never under any circumstance interrupt Dave's first cup of coffee. Not for system diagnostics, not for minor fires, not even for a full-scale alien invasion. So when the station's console crackled to life with a monotone warning, "Hostile forces detected in solar system," Dave didn't react. He was standing in front of the aging coffee machine in Bay 4, hunched over his chipped mug that read "Universe's okayest engineer," carefully measuring the ratio of grounds to water. His attention was fully locked on achieving the elusive perfect brew. The computer repeated its warning, this time with flashing red indicators. Dave didn't flinch. Then came, "This is not a drill. All personnel report to emergency stations." Yeah, Dave muttered, watching the final drop of coffee fill the mug. "The galaxy can wait 5 damn minutes." Above him, somewhere on the command deck, generals and diplomats were likely screaming over holoscreens, analyzing the incoming data, debating countermeasures. He had more immediate concerns, like the fact that someone had installed the new plasma coupling in Airlock 6 backwards, and it was probably going to take the rest of the morning to fix. Again, before he could take a second sip, the maintenance bay's doors hissed open. Commander Janet Rodriguez entered like a thunderstorm in uniform, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp. "Cooper," she snapped. "Why the hell aren't you at your emergency station?" Dave took a slow sip from his mug, leaned against the cluttered workbench, and nodded toward the wiring panels, sparking gently in protest. "This is my emergency station," he said calmly. "If the lights go out, people panic. Somebody has to keep this tin can from coming apart while everyone else plays war games." She crossed her arms. "The largest alien fleet in recorded history is at our doorstep." Dave didn't even look up, and yet somehow, someone still found time to jam chewing gum into the ventilation for the backup generator. Priorities. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. The Galactic Empire has conquered half the known universe. Their warriors are genetically enhanced. Their technology is centuries beyond us. Dave finally turned his attention to her, brow raised. "Can they fix a reverse polarized plasma coupling in zero gravity without frying themselves?" A rumble shook the floor. The lights flickered, followed by the telltale hum of a failing subgrid relay. "Wonderful," Dave muttered, draining his cup. "Now I've got power failures and a Xeno fleet trying to turn us into space dust." As he grabbed his tools and headed for the nearest conduit junction, Rodriguez tried to follow. Another explosion rocked the deck, much closer this time. "You don't get it, Cooper," she shouted after him. "This is the end of humanity if we don't fight back." Dave didn't stop walking. "Then someone better brew more coffee. We're gonna need it." What Rodriguez didn't realize, what no one did, was that the most powerful weapon Earth had at its disposal wasn't parked in a launch bay or uploaded into a tactical database. It was a 47-year-old maintenance engineer with a caffeine addiction, a toolbox full of mismatched parts, and absolutely zero patience for alien nonsense. Dave didn't care about conquests or galactic domination. He cared about humming generators, working pressure seals, and why someone rerouted auxiliary power without running a load test. The war hadn't officially begun yet, and already, the Empire had broken all 3 of Dave's cardinal rules. First, they'd sent a computer alert without prompting. Second, his tools were missing. Someone had borrowed his insulated torque wrench again. And worst of all, they'd interrupted his coffee. By the time he reached the maintenance shaft, Dave was fuming not out of fear, but irritation. He could hear faint booms above as the command deck scrambled to respond. A few corridors over, emergency teams sprinted toward defensive turrets and launch bays. None of that mattered to Dave. What mattered was that he was elbow-deep in a mess of unshielded wires trying to fix a relay failure caused by someone who apparently thought grounding was just a suggestion. "You call this a wiring job?" Dave grumbled, twisting a connector until it snapped into place. This is what happens when you let software guys touch hardware. His tablet pinged. A message flashed. Priority alert. Enemy fleet approaching primary orbit. Neat, Dave muttered, not even looking. Then his tablet buzzed again, this time with an accidental patch into the military's emergency channel. A voice boomed from the device. "This is Commander Varnak of the Galactic Empire. Surrender your planet or be destroyed." Dave raised an eyebrow. Bit dramatic, don't you think? He hadn't meant to say it out loud, but his comms channel was still open. Who dares mock the Empire's ultimatum? Dave rolled his eyes. Sorry, just your local maintenance guy. But, before you start vaporizing things, maybe run a quick check on your coolant systems. I can hear them struggling from here. Silence. What? How do you know that? Dave sighed, standing up, stretching his back. 20 years of fixing everything that can break in space. Trust me, the more advanced your tech is, the more it fails when you skip the little stuff like maintenance. More silence. Then, perhaps, a short delay, routine diagnostics. Dave smirked, patting the panel as the relay came online. That's what I thought. He didn't know it yet, but that comment alone had just bought Earth time its military desperately needed. While generals pored over tactical maps and scrambled fighter deployments, one man with a wrench had done more in 30 seconds than their entire defense committee. And all he'd wanted was to drink his coffee in peace. Back in the control room, human leaders stared at one another in disbelief. Did he just delay an alien invasion? Someone whispered. He did, Rodriguez murmured, with sarcasm and a working knowledge of thermal regulators. It wouldn't be the last time. For now, Dave had other things to worry about. Airlock 6 was still busted. The relay needed calibration. And if one more person rerouted power without notifying maintenance, he was going to weld the next idiot's boots to the floor. He glanced back at the half-empty mug on the bench. Cold now, just like every morning. Some days, he muttered, grabbing his wrench and heading back toward the chaos. I really should have just stayed in bed. Dave Cooper was elbow-deep in a mess of scorched wiring, cursing under his breath as another static shock jumped to his forearm when his tablet let out a loud crackle. Demands the immediate surrender of Earth and all human territories. He blinked. That wasn't the maintenance channel. He squinted at the device somehow. In the chaos of rerouting broken circuits and overriding safety locks, he'd accidentally tapped into the emergency command frequency. He was now eavesdropping. No, actively listening to what sounded like the start of Earth's last conversation. Another voice chimed in, unmistakably General Thompson, the gruff, no-nonsense man who'd made a career of yelling at people while holding 5-star medals on his chest. And if we refuse? Dave, curiosity piqued, paused in his work and leaned on his elbow, watching the sparks flicker from the open conduit. He sipped the last lukewarm dregs from his mug bittersweet, like this whole situation. Then we will demonstrate the true power of the Galactic Empire, the alien voice boomed. Our warships carry weapons beyond your comprehension. Our warriors are trained in combat arts your species cannot fathom. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your resistance would be... Have you tried turning it off and on again? Dave's voice cut in before he could stop himself. He winced, then blinked. He definitely hadn't muted his mech. The silence that followed was so profound it felt like the entire universe had paused for a beat. Who dares mock the Empire's ultimatum? The alien voice thundered, filled with outrage. Dave cleared his throat, suddenly very aware that he was covered in soot, holding a wrench and probably speaking directly to a species capable of vaporizing continents. Sorry, he said, keeping his voice casual. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just your friendly neighborhood maintenance engineer suggesting a little basic troubleshooting. You know, before we jump straight to planetary annihilation. Cooper! General Thompson snapped, his voice teetering between panic and fury. Get off this channel now! But Dave wasn't done. He tugged at a stubborn cable, sparks dancing around his fingers as he muttered, "If your ultra-advanced weapons are anything like the rest of our systems, half of them probably just need a reboot, and the other half are running on outdated drivers." There was a sputtering on the alien end. "Not rage. Not yet. Confusion. Our technology is perfect," came the indignant reply. "We have mastered the fundamental forces of the universe." "Then why," Dave said, raising an eyebrow, "can I hear your ship's coolant system struggling from all the way down here?" That high-pitched whine in the background. Classic case of overtaxed thermal regulators. Bet you haven't checked those in a while. Another pause. This one wasn't silent, it was loaded. How can you hear that?" Dave smirked. 20 years of fixing every possible disaster on a space station held together by duct tape and hope. You learn the signs. And let me tell you something, buddy, the fancier the tech, the worse it performs when nobody bothers with maintenance. At that moment, Dave finally managed to jam the last connection back in place. The console hummed back to life, a soft glow illuminating his face. A holographic screen flickered into existence, displaying the main command bridge of Orbital Station Alpha, and on another panel, the face of the alien commander, in full armor, antenna twitching with disbelief. The thing looked like someone had tried to fuse a praying mantis with a chrome espresso machine. Glowing eyes, mandibles clicking furiously, shoulders heaving with indignation. "You question the superiority of our technology," it demanded. "Our fleet has never known defeat." Dave shrugged, adjusted the focus on the hologram with the tip of his wrench, and replied, "There's a first time for everything. By the way, your image is flickering. Looks like you're broadcasting on a frequency band that isn't properly aligned. Whole system's probably got a few hundred red lights you've been ignoring." The alien commander twitched. A subordinate leaned in and whispered something. The commander's compound eyes widened. "How did you know about the warning lights?" "Lucky guess," Dave smirked. "But let me put it this way, if you're planning to invade Earth with ships that are one missed maintenance cycle away from a cascading systems failure, maybe double-check your diagnostics before initiating galactic conquest." Back in the Human Command Center, General Thompson and his team stared at their monitors in stunned silence. A man in a coffee-stained jumpsuit was actively humiliating the most dangerous military force in the known galaxy, and it was working. "Perhaps," the alien commander began, less confident now, "perhaps we could delay the invasion. Just long enough to perform some routine diagnostics." "Probably for the best," Dave said, tapping a few more keys on his tablet. "Your port thrusters are running hot too. I can hear the imbalance from here." The alien feed cut off. The room filled with a stunned, awkward silence. Then, General Thompson finally spoke. "Cooper," he said slowly, "did you just prevent an alien invasion by mocking their maintenance standards?" Dave dusted off his hands. "Nah, I just delayed it, until they figure out I was bluffing." He hesitated, then added, "Although that coolant system really did sound rough." The general was still staring at him. So were several high-ranking military officials who'd probably never had a bolt in their hand, let alone crawled through a sewage vent to reboot a waste recycler mid-crisis. Dave adjusted his tool belt. Speaking of which, Airlock 6 still needs fixing. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of the group huddling together, whispering furiously. It was the kind of whispering that usually ended with him being volunteered for something absurd and suicidal. He knew the look. He hated that look. "No," he muttered under his breath. "No, no, no." Sure enough, he heard someone say, "He clearly understands their tech better than anyone else. Maybe we can send him aboard." Dave pinched the bridge of his nose. "Absolutely not," he said aloud, spinning back around. "Whatever crazy idea you're cooking up, I want no part of it. I fix things. I don't do suicide missions." But they were already smiling Commander Rodriguez with a glint in her eye. the general tapping at the briefing table, a massive image of the Empire's flagship looming above them. "Cooper," Rodriguez said, "how do you feel about doing a little consulting?" Dave sighed. "Why do I get the feeling you're about to ask me to climb aboard a hostile alien ship and file a maintenance report?" "No," she said. "Yes," Thompson added at the same time. "Forget it. Airlock 6 is calling me. That coupling isn't going to fix itself." "We already told the Empire you're coming," Rodriguez said. "They requested a consultant. Apparently, your feedback's triggered a lot of internal discussion." Dave stared at her. "You're joking." She shook her head. "Turns out they're very proud and very insecure about their maintenance." Dave muttered something unprintable under his breath and turned toward the door. "I swear, if I die out there, I'm haunting the guy who installed that backwards plasma coupling." "Chen?" Rodriguez coughed. Of course it was Chen. He paused in the doorway, eyes narrowing. "Before I go, one question." "Anything," Thompson said. "Did anyone actually check if our tools are compatible with their systems? Like, do we even have the right adapters?" Silence. "You bought the cheap adapter, didn't you?" More silence. Dave sighed, heading toward his quarters to grab his emergency kit. "Unbelievable. You people want me to save the galaxy, and you won't spring for decent connectors." Behind him, someone whispered, "What's use be?" He didn't turn around, just waved his wrench and muttered, "Some days, I really miss being ignored." Title: Galactic Consultant, Earth Edition. Dave Cooper had been a lot of things in his life. Technician, repairman, coffee addict, reluctant adult, but never, in his wildest dreams, had he expected to be promoted to Galactic Engineering Consultant. And yet, that was exactly what happened after he accidentally humiliated the most powerful empire in the galaxy on an open communications channel. It wasn't intentional. He hadn't meant to call out the Galactic Empire's failing coolant system, or criticize their power grid, or point out the misaligned frequency bands on their comms. But when you've spent decades fixing half-functioning hardware in a rusting orbital station, you tend to notice when things make the wrong kind of noise. And Dave had definitely heard something wrong. His offhanded remarks had thrown the Empire's command into chaos. While the rest of humanity watched in awe, Dave simply wiped his hands on a rag, muttered something about probably overdue for a firmware update, and got back to fixing a blown-out relay. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Within hours, the military brass on Orbital Station Alpha were shoving him into a conference room with more stars on shoulders than a Hollywood premiere. Holograms flickered, voices barked, tension buzzed like an overloaded circuit. And in the middle of it all sat Dave, oil-stained, sleep-deprived, and still holding his favorite wrench, Betty. "This is insane," he said flatly, arms crossed. "You want me to what?" Commander Rodriguez leaned forward, her smile way too pleased with herself. "We want you to board the Empire's flagship," Dave blinked. "Why?" "So I can file a maintenance complaint in person." "They've requested technical assistance," General Thompson said, not even flinching. "Your comments sparked debate among their engineering corps. They've agreed to allow one human on board to verify their systems are superior. So, let me get this straight," Dave said slowly. "They're mad because I roasted their wiring on a public channel. Now they want me to come aboard their death machine and apologize." "Demonstrate the integrity of our perspective," the Admiral corrected. "Right," Dave scoffed. "By poking around their circuits and hoping they don't vaporize me halfway through a diagnostic." "No thanks. You'll be under diplomatic immunity," someone offered. Dave raised an eyebrow. "And they changed their mind mid-tour?" There was silence. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Rodriguez tried again. "We wouldn't send you in without support. We'll have a transport standing by." "You mean a glorified Uber in orbit," Dave muttered. Thompson leaned in. "Cooper, you don't understand. This is the first opening we've had. The Empire never asks for help. Never hesitates. But now, they're insecure. They're doubting themselves. You did that." "I was bluffing," Dave shot back, "making stuff up to stall." You seriously think I can waltz onto their flagship and reboot galactic tyranny? Worked better than anything we came up with, Thompson said. Dave sighed and looked down at Betty, still warm from the last repair. Fine, he said finally. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. I want real coffee, the good stuff. No more powdered sludge from the commissary. Done. 2. I want a new maintenance bay with proper ventilation and actual insulation. Granted. And 3. Dave's eyes narrowed. I want to know who installed the plasma coupling in airlock 6 backward. If this goes sideways, I deserve to know who I'm haunting. Rodriguez cleared her throat. That was Lieutenant Chen. Dave's lips pressed into a thin line. Chen. The same guy who tried to optimize life support by turning off half the safety protocols? The very same. He shook his head. When I get back, we're having a very long chat about proper installation procedures. Hours later, Dave stood in the docking bay, staring at the Empire's flagship. It loomed beyond the station's windows, massive, angular, and unsettlingly quiet, like someone had tried to build a Death Star out of resentment and poor design choices, then got bored halfway and slapped on a bunch of mismatched engines. Just before boarding, Dave turned to the assembled command staff. Quick question, he said. You made sure our connectors are compatible with theirs, right? You know power standards, interface ports? The silence was immediate and damning. You bought the cheap adapter, didn't you? Thompson coughed. It's universal. There's no such thing as universal, Dave snapped. Everyone says that right before smoke starts coming out of a socket. Give me an hour to grab my emergency kit, and someone better start praying the most advanced fleet in the galaxy still uses a CIP. Getting onto the Empire's ship turned out to be the easy part. Getting anything done once there was a bureaucratic nightmare. Dave found himself stuck in a glass-paneled holding area surrounded by alien engineers who looked like a mix between praying mantises and outdated fax machines. Before you may access our systems, one clicked, you must complete forms X27-6, Tier 135, and PAX 90. Dave stared. I'm not signing up for a gym. I'm here to look at your maintenance logs. The alien held firm. Without proper paperwork, access is prohibited. What happens if a core system fails while I wait? That would require emergency form NG99, approved by High Command. A nearby console beeped, then screamed. Red lights danced along the walls. Something in the distance exploded. Dave sighed. Yeah, that's not ominous at all. Another warning flashed. You know what, he said, already walking. Pretend I filed form whatever. I'm going to stop your antimatter containment field from turning us into stardust. The procedure is about to be very dead if I don't get in there, Dave finished. The engineering deck was a chrome hellscape of blinking lights, unnecessary lead strips, and the faint smell of overheating polymers. Dave elbowed past a squad of panicked alien engineers huddled around a console. Let me guess, he said, reading their display. Everything was fine until someone hit update now instead of remind me later? It was mandatory, one chittered. Of course it was. That's how they get you, Dave muttered, cracking open a panel and pulling out his tablet. The system was mid-update, trying to install firmware that clearly wasn't compatible. He recognized the science power fluctuation, heat spikes, data lag. Somewhere deep in the system, a digital disaster was unfolding. You didn't even back up your configs, did you? Blank stares. Figures. He pulled out Betty, crawled under the console and started rerouting. Sparks flew, warnings blared. One pipe hissed something that sounded wet and chemical. But after 15 minutes of very creative wiring, a few minor electrocutions, and exactly zero documentation, the containment field stabilized. You're welcome, Dave grunted, standing up covered in coolant. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. A squad of alien guards, each clad in spiky, over-designed armor, burst in, weapons drawn. You are under arrest for unauthorized system access. Dave raised his hands. Let me guess, you filed Form X-27-7. The lead guard blinked. Yes, yeah. At least someone here knows their paperwork. Then Dave's tablet beeped. The system update had restarted. Wait, he said, eyes going wide. Did anyone file NG-99 for interrupting emergency repairs? They hadn't. Dave dove into a maintenance tunnel just as the ship's systems began cascading into total failure. Behind him, alarms screamed. Lights strobed. The mighty flagship of the Empire, symbol of dominance across the galaxy, was now a digital mess of error codes, failed updates, and a disgruntled Earth mechanic trying to keep it from exploding. And somewhere, in a glowing corner of the bridge, a commander demanded to know who had let the coffee-stained human anywhere near their systems. No one answered. Because somehow, despite centuries of conquests, the Empire had missed one universal truth. If you skip your updates and ignore your warning lights, eventually someone like Dave Cooper will show up with a wrench, a grudge, and a whole lot of experience fixing what others broke. Dave Cooper had expected a lot of things when he boarded the Empire's flagship. Death, for instance. Or maybe abduction. Possibly vaporization if someone sneezed wrong near a reactor core. What he hadn't expected was paperwork. So, he said slowly, eyeing the creature standing in front of him, you need me to fill out 17 different forms in triplicate before I can even look at your maintenance logs. The alien technician, who looked like someone had bred a praying mantis with a file cabinet, clicked its mandibles in confirmation. That is correct. Form X-27B6 for system access, 135 for diagnostic permissions, and Cease-4, 991. Dave held up a hand. Stop. Just stop. Quick question. What happens if something critical fails while we're waiting for all this to clear? The mantis creature's compound eyes flicked back and forth before it responded in a precise, bureaucratic tone. That would require Form NG-99 for emergency procedures, which must be... A deep rumble shook the hallway. Something in the distance let out a grinding screech that sounded very much like a multi-ton piece of equipment doing something it absolutely wasn't designed to do. Dave's expression didn't change. Let me guess. Approved by a senior officer, right? Correct. Another explosion, closer this time, rattled a nearby bulkhead and set off a row of red warning lights along the ceiling. Dave didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his repair tablet, and sighed. Tell you what, he said. How about I pretend I filed whatever form, and in return, I stop your antimatter containment field from exploding? The technician twitched. That would violate section. Of course it would, Dave muttered. That's how you know it's worth doing. Without waiting for a response, he jogged down the corridor toward the source of the disturbance, boots echoing against the polished black metal floor. The Empire's engineering deck was impressive, in the same way an overly complicated espresso machine was impressive. Shiny, massive, completely over-designed. Every surface gleamed. Every panel had blinking lights, and everything was bathed in ominous red accent lighting that probably looked dramatic during war briefings, but made actual work nearly impossible. Would it kill these guys to install work lights? Dave grumbled, shielding his eyes from the glare. Not everyone has compound vision. His tablet beeped the universal sound of "You're not going to like this." The containment field's power readings were all over the place. Voltage spikes, software conflicts, something about a failed driver update. Someone had clearly attempted to push a system update without checking compatibility. Amateurs, Dave muttered, ducking into a narrow maintenance tunnel. Let me guess they clicked update now instead of remind me later. He squeezed through the cramped access shaft, muttering to himself, knees bumping into power relays and coolant pipes. Finally, he emerged into the containment control room just as another alarm blared. 3 alien engineers were already there, frantically tapping at a console that looked like a fusion between a DJ's turntable and a nuclear control panel. They froze as Dave stepped in, grease-streaked and unimpressed. Everything was working fine. One chirped nervously until someone installed the security patch. Dave pushed past them. That's how they get you. He slid behind the panel, eyes scanning the controls. Did you at least back up your configuration files? Blank stares. Of course not, he muttered. Why would you follow the first rule of updates? With a sigh, he pulled out his trusty multi-tool Betty and got to work. Sparks flew. Panels hissed. The engineers backed away as Dave performed what could only be described as combat maintenance, muttering a steady stream of profanity and insults toward the system's architecture. Who designed this? He growled. This file structure looks like someone let a drunk intern mash the keyboard and called it a day. You've got redundant systems for your redundant systems, but no rollback functionality. That's not efficient, that's masochism. One of the engineers stepped forward cautiously. The Great Archive says this configuration is optimal. Dave scoffed. The Great Archive needs to take a basic course in software engineering. Alarms continued to wail. Something inside the wall made a sound like a dying garbage disposal. By the way, Dave said without looking up, who thought it was a good idea to build a quantum computer with only one physical off switch. He reached for a wrench. Hand me that spanner. No, the other one. The one that looks like it violates the laws of thermodynamics. Suddenly, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Dave glanced at his tablet. A new notification flashed across the screen. Security forces inbound. Unauthorized human presence detected. He sighed. Finally, someone filled out the proper form to report me. Almost got it, he muttered, tightening the last bolt. The hissing stopped. The warning lights dimmed. His tablet showed a green bar. Containment field stabilized. Was that so hard? Was so hard? He stepped out from under the console just in time for a squad of Empire warriors to burst through the door, weapons raised. Their armor was the usual Empire aesthetic. Shiny, menacing, and covered in more spikes than a death metal band's tour bus. You are under arrest, the lead warrior growled, for unauthorized access of critical systems. Dave raised his hands. Let me guess. Form X27 BSL7, the warrior blinked. Yes. At least someone around here knows their paperwork, Dave said. But quick question, did anyone file Form NG99 before interrupting emergency repairs? Confused glances. Dave's tablet beeped. Status. Update initiated. Mandatory reboot sequence commencing. You didn't, Dave said, eyes widening. The console behind him flashed red. The entire ship lurched as system after system began force restarting itself. Dave dove for the maintenance tunnel just as chaos erupted behind him. The thing about maintenance tunnels, Dave thought as he army crawled through a shaft barely wider than his shoulders, was that they were universal. No matter what species built them, they were always narrow, hot, underlit, and filled with just enough danger to keep you humble. Stop in the name of the Empire, someone shouted behind him. Look, Dave called over his shoulder. I just want to finish my shift and go home. Can't we file this under routine maintenance and call it a day? The only reply was a plasma bolt that scorched the wall beside his head. Guess not. His tablet pinged again. System status. Updating. 3,284 conflicts detected. Oh, this is going to get real messy, Dave muttered. He reached a junction left, led to auxiliary controls, right to the engine room. He chose straight ahead, the path to the main computer core. He typed quickly into his tablet, pulling up logs, routing access codes, and overriding security flags. He ducked into a side passage and set a small trap in emergency power coupling, just barely hanging on by a magnetic clip. Moments later, a warrior rounded the corner. "Surrender, human!" the alien bellowed. "You face the Empire's elite guard." Dave didn't even look up. Does elite guard training cover basic electrical safety? What? You're standing on a loose power coupling? Zap? What followed was a masterclass in how not to conduct a boarding operation. The surge triggered fire suppression systems, which messed with the warrior's armor, which locked their weapons, which launched them into a ballet of sparks, foam, and screaming. Dave stepped past the chaos, careful not to slip. Emergency medbots should be here in 3 minutes, assuming their update doesn't crash. As Dave neared the computer core, the situation on the ship was spiraling. More systems were failing, doors jammed, lights flickered in colors that definitely weren't Asha approved. His tablet showed hundreds of critical errors cascading across the fleet. And the worst part, all of it was triggered by a simple update. He'd seen it 1,000 times before. One unattended system, one neglected patch, and boom, digital apocalypse. Now the most powerful warship in the galaxy was choking on its own firmware. Some days, Dave muttered, I really miss Airlock 6. Press here to collapse an empire. If Dave Cooper had known how the day would turn out, he might have brewed a second cup of coffee or just stayed in bed and let someone else deal with the apocalypse. But no. One sarcastic comment, one loose cable, and one wrench-swinging maintenance tech with a caffeine deficit had just become public enemy number one aboard the Galactic Empire's flagship. He hadn't even done anything that drastic yet. All he'd done was point out a few questionable noises from the ship's coolant system, maybe poke fun at their comms alignment, and possibly embarrass the commander of the fleet in front of an entire galactic war council. But it's not like he hacked into their systems or sabotaged their ship, at least not intentionally. The real problem was their update system, because the moment he tried to stabilize their containment field, Dave's makeshift interface with the Empire's controls triggered an unintended chain reaction. Their ship, no, their entire fleet started what he liked to call a comprehensive technical readjustment. Most people would call it everything breaking at once. It started with a flicker, a subtle warning on his tablet. Then the error messages came in waves, one after another. Incompatible system detected. Cannot cancel update. Rollback unavailable. Well, Dave muttered, watching the update bar flicker from initializing to a mandatory restart in progress. A low hum echoed through the ship. Then the lights dimmed. Then every holographic display in the command center began to glitch, blinking error codes in languages Dave couldn't read, but could absolutely recognize as bad news. "What did you do?" barked Commander Vexer, storming into the core chamber, his armor still dripping with fire suppression foam from their last encounter. Dave held up both hands, backing away from the crystal-like computer core pulsing violently at the room's center. "Me? Nothing. Your system's just finally doing what it's been threatening to do for a decade, collapse under the weight of bad updates. Stop the process. I can't. It's already past the failsafe. You triggered the mandatory system reconfiguration protocol. The only way out is to..." "What?" Dave scratched his head. "Turn it off and on again. You dare." "Hey, I'm just telling you what your own systems are screaming in all caps. Maybe don't design your flagship to collapse if someone jiggles a cable too hard." The commander's mandibles twitched furiously. Behind him, more alien warriors filtered into the chamber, weapons raised, systems blinking erratically. One of the junior officers whispered, "Sir, our grav stabilizers just went offline." "What?" As if on cue, the entire room tilted 90 degrees. Dave went tumbling across the floor as gravity inverted, sending engineers and soldiers sliding into walls, chairs, and each other. He bounced off a console, slammed into a railing, and somehow landed on his feet when gravity returned with a thud. He blinked. That was new. The lights pulsed wildly green to red to ultraviolet, and finally, some color Dave was fairly certain didn't exist in the human visual spectrum. Somewhere behind him, the ship's AI began reciting ancient poetry in what sounded like 17 languages simultaneously. One of the soldiers collapsed to his knees, muttering about eldritch geometry. "I warned you about unpatched firmware," Dave called out, yanking his tablet from his belt. "Let's see if we can at least slow it down." The screen flashed, installing update 1 of 2, total 47,962. Dave's eyebrows shot up. That's a lot. Commander Vexer staggered to his feet, clearly disoriented. "You've crippled the Empire's flagship." Dave turned, eyes still on the tablet. "Not crippled. Just forced you to catch up on a few centuries of skipped updates. We will destroy you for this." "No, you won't," Dave said casually. You can't. Your weapons systems just triggered their own diagnostic mode, and your armor is about to start playing disco music again. What? Sure enough, Vexor's shoulder pads began blinking rhythmically to a bass line that hadn't been heard since Earth's 1,970 seconds. The rest of the soldiers looked around, alarmed as their gear joined in. Somewhere in the background, a voice yelled, "Why is my visor playing Barry White?" Dave just shrugged. I didn't do that part. And he hadn't, not directly anyway. But the systems were so interconnected, so dependent on shared resources, that when one piece collapsed, everything else started following like dominoes on a slippery floor. The transmission screens blinked again. Messages from the rest of the fleet flooded in. Engine control locked out. Weapons array offline. Ship-wide recalibration initiated. Now installing legacy drivers from archive. Dave winced. Oof, that last one's gonna hurt. You've sabotaged our entire war fleet, Vexor shouted, armor now humming along to some kind of retro synth beat. I really haven't, Dave replied. I just did what anyone in my position would do, offered a little technical advice. You're the ones who didn't update anything for 400 years. Another soldier checked his wrist unit and gasped. Sir, all ships are reporting system-wide instability. We're dead in space. Dave nodded slowly. Yeah, that tends to happen when your fleet becomes a floating progress bar. He looked out the viewport. The mighty warships of the Empire, once bristling with terrifying power, now flickered like confused office printers on the verge of retirement. Lights blinked out of sync. Engines stalled mid-rotation. One ship appeared to be running some kind of diagnostics in musical notation. Beautiful in a way, Dave said under his breath. Vexor growled, lunging toward him, but the ship's artificial gravity flickered again, dropping everyone 6 feet to the floor and effectively knocking the commander unconscious in the process. Dave pushed himself to his feet, brushing off coolant residue and God knows what from his jumpsuit. The AI was now reading out. Estimated update time, 47 years, 3 months, 2 days, 6 hours. He stared at the number, then sighed. Guess I'll be billing overtime. The emergency alarms continued to chirp cheerfully, clearly unaware they were announcing the death knell of an invasion. All across the Empire's fleet, ships had entered technical lockdown. Engines, shields, weapons, and even life support systems were rebooting or failing outright because someone somewhere decided not to install a critical patch 7 versions ago. Dave didn't gloat. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly he was tired. He sent one final message to Orbital Station Alpha. Fleet neutralized. Recommend someone send a tow truck. And maybe a coffee. He exited the control room slowly, passing stunned engineers still slumped against flickering walls. No one stopped him. No one could. Their systems wouldn't even let them open a door without rebooting the security subroutine first. Back on the shuttle, he dropped into the pilot's seat, leaned back, and kicked up his boots. He didn't even flinch when a final report came through. Empire transmission. Command recommends canceling invasion. Maintenance protocols under review. Dave laughed loud, long and exhausted. When he arrived back at the station, no fanfare greeted him. Just a few stunned officers and one very nervous Lieutenant Chen standing next to Airlock 6. Coupling still reversed, Dave muttered, picking up Betty. Chen gulped. Should I? Oh, help! You're going to, Dave said. And as the Empire's fleet hung frozen in space, stuck mid-update, Dave Cooper did what he always did. Rolled up his sleeves, cursed under his breath, and got back to work. Some heroes ride into battle with swords and banners. Dave, he brings a wrench, maintenance tunnel warfare. The thing about maintenance tunnels, Dave Cooper had learned over 20 years of crawling through them, was that they were the same everywhere. Whether on a rusted human orbital station or a chrome-plated Empire battleship, they all shared 3 things in common. They were too narrow, poorly lit, and filled with things that could kill you in at least 6 creatively unpleasant ways. Today, Dave was crawling through one on the flagship of the Galactic Empire, sweaty, grumpy, and desperately trying not to get shot. Stop in the name of the Empire, came a voice behind him, echoing through the tight aluminum corridor. Dave grunted, dragging himself over a bundle of humming cables. "Can't we just call this routine maintenance and leave it at that?" A plasma bolt screamed past his shoulder and scorched the wall a few inches away. That was apparently a no. "Figures," he muttered, rolling into the next access hatch. The last couple of hours had been a blur. One minute he was trying to stabilize their overheating antimatter containment field. The next, he'd accidentally triggered a cascading system update that crippled the entire flagship. Then someone had finally filed the correct form to arrest him, Form X-27-7, if memory served, and now a squad of heavily armored Empire guards were chasing him through their own ship. It was like being stuck in a bad episode of Space Maintenance gone wrong. He checked his tablet as he crawled, the screen blinking with error messages and frantic system notifications. The ship's update cycle was still in progress. Systems rebooting, AI control offline, emergency lighting recalibrating. The whole flagship was held together with duct tape, pride, and 2 centuries of ignored update notifications, and Dave had just yanked the wrong wire at the worst possible time. Up ahead, the tunnel forked in 3 directions. His tablet's crude map, patched together on the fly, showed that the left path led to auxiliary control, the right to the main engine core, and straight ahead, led to opportunity. He smiled. Time to teach these guys a lesson and proper documentation. Behind him, he could hear the echoing stomp of boots, thick, heavy, and getting closer. The Empire's elite guard, all chrome spikes and terrifying masks, were not taking his accidental sabotage lightly. He typed a quick series of commands into his tablet, then reached for Betty, his trusty multi-tool, worn with years of use and just enough insulation tape to make it technically unsafe. "Sorry about this," he whispered to the ship systems. "But you really should have read the update terms and conditions." Then he wedged himself into a tight side passage just as the first soldier rounded the corner. "Surrender, human. You face the Empire's finest." Dave didn't even look up from his screen. "Quick question. Does finest include training in basic electrical safety?" "What? Because someone really should file the maintenance alert about that loose power coupling you're about to step on." The soldier froze. Too late. Too locked. Dave tapped a button on his tablet, remotely triggering an emergency release. The power coupling sparked violently, unleashing a surge that activated every failsafe in the corridor at once. The fire suppression system kicked in. CO2 jets filled the tunnel with thick fog. The soldier's armor, designed for battle but not OSHA compliance, began glitching under the electrical interference. Their weapons entered safety lock mode. One unfortunate trooper's chestplate began blasting elevator music at full volume. Dave waited for the chaos to settle, then carefully stepped over the twitching, smoking pile of Empire's elite. He checked his tablet again. "Next time," he said, "file a service ticket." The system errors were spreading faster than expected. The Empire's fleet-wide update protocols, long neglected, had started activating on other ships. Dave could see the signals, ships across the Armada beginning their own forced reboots. Entire warships were now stuck in boot loops, rebooting every time they hit 95% install. If the flagship fell now, it wouldn't just be one ship, they'd lose command and control over the entire invasion fleet. He had to keep moving. He darted through the maintenance tunnel, ducking under pipes, jumping over conduits, sliding past still smoldering panels. His legs burned. His jumpsuit stuck to his back. His tablet buzzed like an angry bee nest. A new warning. Main engine control compromised. Update rollback failed. Critical failure imminent. Wonderful, he growled. He reached another junction and dropped into a vertical shaft, climbing down 3 decks using a maintenance ladder slick with coolant. When he hit the floor, he was panting, covered in grime, and very, very done with this day. Ahead, the double doors to the engine control room blinked red and yellow, like a traffic light having a nervous breakdown. Dave forced them open with Betty and stumbled into a chamber filled with pulsing lights, hissing pipes, and a dangerously loud hum. 3 alien engineers spun to face him, eyes wide, tools raised. "Don't shoot," Dave yelled. I'm the idiot who broke your ship." They stared, and also the only one trying to fix it. They looked at each other. "I need access to your emergency subroutines." They hesitated. An explosion rocked the ship. "Now would be a good time," Dave added. One of them tossed him a glowing access key. He caught it, inserted it into the control panel, and began typing like his life depended on it, because it probably did. "Okay, let's see what we've got." Every screen in the room lit up in chaos. One showed a completely unformatted drive labeled "Do Not Delete." Another was running diagnostics in a dead language. A third had attempted to reinstall the ship's original operating system twice. "This is worse than the engineering bay back home," Dave muttered. He worked fast, hands flying over the alien keyboard, adapting as he went. He bypassed corrupted update paths, canceled duplicate processes, rerouted power from overloaded relays, and manually stabilized the backup systems using a combination of brute force, sarcasm, and pure caffeine-fueled spite. Outside the engine core, alarms screamed. One alien shouted something in panic. Dave ignored it all. Come on, he muttered. Just as another critical failure warning flashed, he slammed Betty into the emergency override lever and pulled hard. The room shuddered. Then, silence. Screens flickered. Power surged. The engine core steadied. The update paused. For a moment, everything held still. Then the AI chimed in softly. System stabilization complete. Fleet command offline. Emergency override accepted. Dave slumped against the panel, breathing hard. He'd done it. Not stop the update, but bought enough time to keep the flagship from exploding while the rest of the fleet rebooted into uselessness. The doors behind him burst open. Commander Vexer stood there charred, foamed, blinking wildly. His armor was scratched, his helmet hung loose. His expression was one of absolute, murderous disbelief. "You," Dave stood up, too tired to care. "Yeah, me again. You've humiliated the Empire, collapsed our fleet, and mocked our engineers." Dave scratched his neck. "And fixed your ship. You're welcome. You will not escape justice. I'm not planning to." That gave Vexer pause. No, Dave said. "I'm done. I fixed your core systems, stabilized your containment field, and rerouted half your power grid. All of that, while being chased by idiots in spike armor." Vexer raised a shaking hand, finger pointed. "You will face the Supreme Overlord for this outrage." Dave nodded. "Sure, but first, I've got a question." "What?" "Who designed your ship's ventilation layout? Because whoever it was has no idea how airflow works." And with that, Dave collapsed into a nearby chair and finally took a deep breath. He didn't know what the political fallout would be. He didn't care. The only thing he knew was that his back hurt. He still hadn't eaten lunch, and he was about one plasma coupling away from a nervous breakdown. As the ship limped into forced reboot, drifting silently in space, the rest of the fleet following in chaotic sync, Dave Cooper, maintenance tech, accidental hero, galactic nightmare, finally did the impossible. He beat the Empire with nothing but grit, duct tape, and a bad attitude.